All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We are back after our first Rage of Empires history series entry. My name is Joe from Thunk Tank Podcast, and I'm joined, as apparently usual now, by Tommy. And I am playing as Sir Labs in the blue, and we got Tommy playing as Double Gano in the red. And so today we wanted to try something a little bit different based on some feedback that we got back from. Well, I guess feedback has to get back to you, right?
It's usually what
Otherwise,
defines
it's just
feedback.
feeding. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that checks out. I've been teaching too many hours today. I've been teaching
Fair
writing
enough.
too many hours. I'm burnt out. But yeah, we got some good feedback, and we thought we'd follow up on that. And so today, we decided to do a Mongols versus the world map
Indeed.
because that's what they did, right?
That's basically what they did,
Yeah,
which we'll get into this episode.
yeah. So we're big fans of. Well, I shouldn't say I'm big fans of the Mongols. That just doesn't sound quite
Huge
right.
fans.
Well, the Mongols are an interesting civ. So they're an interesting civ in this game, and they're an interesting civ in history, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not an expert at this game by any means, but I do think they're a pretty good civ to play. And in addition, obviously, they were a huge empire historically as well.
Yeah. So we wanted to kind of just play a fun game here where we try to amass the Mongol horde between the two of us. So we're actually teamed together on this against a bunch of AI, and yeah, we figured we'd talk a little bit about the Mongols, try to go into what exactly is going on with them, like in terms of if you think about how they became a civilization worthy to be included in Age of Empires. How does that happen?
Right. So they've had to have left a lasting impact on the world itself. It's the world history. I mean, that's evident in records too. The actions of Genghis Khan, which we'll discuss later, um, his direct actions have influenced millions of people. Actually, that'll bring me to a quick statistic I learned in my research for this episode that it's currently 16 million direct descendants of Genghis Khan.
How many?
16 million.
What, how? Where?
Just from him.
Just
He
people?
was making moves. Well,
I did read that he had 500 wives.
Yeah, he had a lot. Okay, so he was quite a conqueror, as the Mongols were, and as you may know, or may not know. However, he had a certain way about his conquests that would made him different than previous Khans and even other empires. But we'll get into that in a moment. The Mongols themselves. There's two adjectives I'd like to say or use to describe them, and they would be conquer and assimilate. That's basically what they did for pretty much all of their history. They were always kind of a warfaring, conflict-driven civilization. They never really had any great works, no great novels, no new trades or crafts.
Right.
A lot of the craftsmen and tradesmen in their empire who worked all the, I guess, the smaller day-to-day stuff, they were peoples that were already conquered by the Mongols. So they weren't Mongolian themselves, so to say.
Okay.
A lot of them were people they conquered, and they just took up the chores and would do a lot of the grunt work, so to say. So
that sounds about right.
So
where did you learn all this about the Mongols?
I did some research, as any historian would do before doing a rage cast.
Is that what? I guess you are to being a historian as this is to being an actual cast of some sort.
Correct. So it's a perfect fit.
You tried to say misfit. you meant to say misfit, right? Well, so I should mention for those of you who are joining us for the first time as well, I am a professor, and Tommy here is a student at another university who he studies history, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So we are versed in being nerds essentially and researching this type of stuff.
This is what I do in my free time. I look up rabbit hole histories on Wikipedia that lead me to research articles, and then that's
I found some really weird sources where I realized I was in too deep.
Yeah.
I would start at Wikipedia and then keep clicking on their sources and then get into pseudo primary sources and all of a sudden realize this is
I know that
this is a bit deep.
Wikipedia is definitely not reliable. However, they do provide a lot of good sources at the footnote section, and that was very helpful in finding useful stuff for this Mongol research episode. All right, so the geography of the Mongols. What did you find in your research? And then I'll tell you mine.
In terms of geography, well, funny you should say that because the map that we were playing on is a Mongolia map. So, yeah, it's. I mean, you always hear it characterized as sort of. Is it pronounced steppe or steppy?
I think it's steppe. It's steppe.
Steppe. All
Yeah.
right. They threw me
You
off.
can
with
pronounce
the,
it steppy.
They threw me off with the extra letters. I
Yeah,
don't
fair
know
enough. It's Mongolian.
I'm not
don't
even
know, I
gonna
don't
try
know.
to pronounce some of the names I looked up because
No.
I found some really important ones. Ooh, and I'm already in the feudal age. Wow, look at that.
I'm curious to see what you found in your research, because I'm curious if we crossed over with it.
Well, in terms of geography,
Anything. I did a lot of
Yeah.
research on Genghis Khan himself.
Yeah,
His early life.
I was looking at his early life. Man, his whole life is basically Game of Thrones.
It really was like
It's crazy.
right when his life was starting to go pretty okay, like, life would just throw him a heavy curveball
Yeah,
right away.
It's funny because I was reading all this stuff about Mongols, and then I figured, let me go look up Genghis Khan in more depth to see what's going on with him. And lo and behold, there's a reason why he's so. I mean, obviously, all the crazy shit he did, why he's so well known, but his life was crazy, even as a kid.
Yes.
He was.
Was his mother was abducted by warriors?
Oh, everybody gets abducted.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah,
way of the
he was
life
abducted.
on
Yeah,
the steppe.
yeah, yeah, and it was all clans and. Yeah, he was supposed to be married away at the age of 9, I think, and
Well, the thing with his youth was he saw
father was
a lot
poisoned.
of this happen. He's witnessed a lot of this going down, and he saw the world for what it was at the time, a bloodbath. Society was characterized by just blood feuds and familial conflict. There was always grudges, score settling over generations occurring.
Yeah.
And he, at a young age, resolved to do something about it. He wanted to change the world, and he did.
Yeah, and in reading about all of that in terms of his younger years, I mean, it seemed like he kind of there were ups and downs, not just in terms of his like the tribe that he was a part of, but his family life too. It's all tied together, and one of the interesting parts was I was reading something about it. His father was poisoned, and then he kind of became the leader of his group, and then it's just kind of battling from there. And did you read about his friend?
His blood brother from
Yeah,
youth that he
his
ended up
blood brother.
going. What was that? Is that the one he ended up going against war with for the
Yes.
title of Great Khan?
Well, he was. I don't know if they were both going for the same title, but so his best friend, basically, or the guy who started as his best friend, ended up becoming one of his biggest rivals, and they went back and forth with battles. Like his friend, I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's spelled. Looks like it's pronounced Jamuka.
Jamuka.
Jamuka. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. I don't even know how to say
I
Genghis
think it's
Khan.
Jamuka.
All right. So
Genghis is Genghis or Chenghis.
Yeah.
It's either or.
whatever. It's that guy. You know who I mean.
You know.
You know.
If you're watching,
You will. Yeah. If you're watching, you know what's going on. Yeah. So yeah, they went back and forth in terms of their success, and then when they were going at it once more towards the end of it, that guy's generals or guys, bodyguards or whatever, turned him into Genghis Khan basically.
Yeah. Also, well, the problem was Jamuka started to treat him like a lesser than an equal, which they considered each other as equals for a long time. But Temujin, who was Genghis Khan before he gained that title,
Before he
Great
became
Khan.
Khaleesi.
Basically.
There's so many Game of Thrones connections.
so many.
I wrote down a few.
Oh
It's
my
really
goodness.
funny, yeah.
So Temujin. Oh, what was I saying? Train of thought.
You lost your train of thought. Well, so I'm just gonna call him Genghis Khan
That's
because
fine.
that's too many names I've never heard of to remember.
Oh, I remembered. So Temujin He was born into a family where he had half brothers and half sisters, half siblings, and there was one, I think, half brother that always treated him as a lesser, and that really didn't bode well for him. I don't know the full story, but essentially him and one of his other brothers got together and just murdered him in cold blood, and he
Sounds
actually
about
did
right.
end up going into like exile for a short amount of time. Well, needless to say, though, when Jamaica later on started to treat him lesser, and they kind of considered each other as brothers, as equals, and needless to say, once he started to mistreat him, and he's already had past problems with brother figures treating him lesser, you can kind of surmise what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and I like how it all ends, so I'll
Yeah.
just spoil it because basically, so that Jamaica's dudes turn him over to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan hangs those dudes because he says like, "Oh yeah, disloyalty can't be trusted." Basically,
Right.
offers to be friends again with this guy, who says something like, "There can only be one sun in the sky," and ask for a noble death. Which you know what a noble death was?
What was it?
Noble death was to have your back broken,
Mm,
and because they had this apparently this way of life of not spilling blood, which remember where that's from? That's in Game of Thrones too, where they're not allowed to spill blood in their holy city.
oh,
So you can't have swords because there's no purpose. Like,
that's true. Yeah, they
yeah.
weren't allowed to bring weapons to a lot of events that they would hold.
So I just thought that was an interesting, just random connection. Not random connection, but I came about it just like totally randomly, where it was like, oh, you can't like you're supposed to kill the dude without spilling his blood. That's interesting because that's
Let me snap his spine. 'Cause
yeah.
That's much better.
I mean, like you need to know that there's more connections than the fact that they're calls instead of cons in Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah.
And also that dude though, who asked to have his back broken, was also known for boiling his enemies alive in cauldrons.
Oh, I forgot that I saw a story on that. He burnt like over 100 people
Yeah.
alive
So
just to prove a point.
Yeah.
Make a stance or
Yeah.
statement rather.
That's rough. That's some
rough.
Game of Thrones type stuff.
That's some Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Action right there.
Yeah.
But as you just mentioned, that reminded me of something. Great Khan, Genghis Khan, his philosophy.
Greatest Khan, the best of all the Khans. I bet you if you just like went to Donald Trump and you were like, yeah, this new businessman, Mr. Genghis, like,
Genghis.
yeah, and you just started, talking him up and like, you got to go out there and go on the news, and praise this guy. He would
tell
do
you
it.
people, he's a
He would do
tremendous
it.
Khan. He's the biggest Khan. You're right, he is the biggest Khan.
Yeah.
Anyways, Genghis Khan's philosophy of war.
God, my city sucks. I apologize for my horrific play.
That's all right. I mean, you're building the house walls. That's
God,
something.
It's terrible. It's not great. I'm gonna focus on yours. Okay.
I think I had an okay game this time.
You have scouts.
I do have like more
think
than
I have
one
any
scout.
military.
That's something. You have a barracks and a stable.
I think my mistake is I'm farming, which the Mongols weren't as fond of as living off the land.
Yes. That was the life on the steppe then.
So that's
Hunting
actually
and
an
gathering.
interesting connection here, a reflection to how they're represented in this game. Is they actually have, I believe they have the best hunt bonus, or maybe the only hunt bonus in the game. But
yes, they do.
Hunters work 50% faster. They should have a forage bonus too, probably, because I mean they would just live off the land in general. But
they got to make the game fair.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's a pretty good bonus though.
Yeah.
50% faster.
Yeah.
Get some boars on the town center.
That's what T90 always says, that the three fastest collection methods in the game are Indians on shorefish, I think, are number one.
I think so.
And then Mongol hunt is number 2, and then anybody else on shorefish is number 3.
Yeah, you gotta eat up those shorefish.
You were saying?
So
I'm just gonna keep derailing you.
That's fine. That's the thunk way. So Genghis Khan's philosophy of war. What are you doing up there?
Oh,
sorry.
I was building a house mill wall.
Oh, okay.
So I milled some deer.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll allow that.
There's pseudo logic to it. Just like Genghis Khan did.
Yeah.
Mill house walls.
I give him that. He did think on his feet.
Come on, keep up, Tom.
A decent amount. But his philosophy of war is very different. It's a very different approach from previous conquerors at the time.
Oh yeah, big time.
He would conquer a people, and he would immediately kill the aristocracy and the leaders in a public execution style. And then he'd pose a choice to the remaining civilians. You can either A, join, or B, you can die. Like your leader just did in front of you.
That's some Daenerys Targaryen
That's some
shit.
Daenerys Targaryen shit, right? Also, he would often adopt children from the tribes he would conquer.
And that was his 500 wives.
Yeah, taking like 5 or 10 wives from that tribe, and just that was his way of making peace with them.
Well, you know, those were the days.
Those were the days.
Yeah, that's wild stuff, man.
But the interesting thing was he recognized the wheel of warfare in the Mongol life.
Where did you learn that phrase? The wheel of warfare.
Where do you think I learned it from?
Internet.
Yeah. But he recognized it. It was always characterized by Mongol tribes attacking one tribe and then killing a bunch of them, or some of them at least, and then the rest of them scattering off. And then they regroup, and then either soon after or generations later, they would retaliate and attack back. And it was just a vicious cycle of this never ending. But Genghis Khan recognized this and realized it wasn't sustainable. So he began that thing, as I just mentioned earlier, that he would kill the aristocracy, because the aristocracy was really the only group in the caste system that could rise up and put together a force to fight back against them. Because otherwise it was just like peasants and unskilled workers. But however, these lower class people really liked Genghis Khan because what he offered was a meritocracy system. So he would promote people based on ability and skill rather than familial ties, which was pretty much unheard of till that time. So he gained a lot of support from the lower classes, which were obviously a lot more people than the upper classes. And the people that were in the upper classes that could say something about it were going to get killed anyways, and if not, were already dead.
And I think that was part of his vibe too with his organization, was to have more of a meritocracy than focusing on just kind of familial history and those sorts of ties. And his friend Jamuka was kind of the opposite. Like,
right.
He was in support of the aristocracy. Yeah. Which I mean, I'm not surprised by that fact that helped, or may have helped him in some ways to
help too.
Yeah.
Genghis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Just become Supreme Khan or whatever that title is.
I mean, yeah, because it offered a means for these people to rise up in a world in the 1200s. It would have been like 1202. I think the Civil War started right at the turn of the century.
Yeah, I think it was right around the turn of.
So at that time, people were born in the dirt, they lived in the dirt, and they died in the dirt, and that was just the way of life, you know.
Getting heavy, man.
It was tough. It was tough out there for a Mongol.
The steppes.
On the steppes.
Yeah.
But Temujin, Genghis Khan, offered a way out.
And then what happened?
A lot of people joined him.
So I have some facts about Mongolia.
Let's hear it.
Did you know that only 3 million Mongols are in Mongolia, but there's 6 million in China?
I've heard that there's very few. It's a very poor country now.
It's also,
which is interesting.
Along those lines,
I mean, it's 1,000 years ago. But
it's
still.
the second largest landlocked country in the world.
What's the first?
Kazakhstan.
Oh,
but
okay.
Kazakhstan has an inland sea, so it's the largest. Mongolia is the largest landlocked country in the world if you don't count inland seas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Kazakhstan, if I'm not correct, or if I'm incorrect, actually, I'm pretty sure he conquered them, didn't he?
Conquered everything, bro.
He reached all the
Name
way
a
out
place.
there. Kazakhstan.
Name a place. Go ahead.
He didn't conquer India.
Well, not with that attitude.
So he conquered everything around it. But they couldn't conquer India because the climate was too humid. So the horses and the men just weren't used to it. And on top of that, their bows that were really good in the hot heat and cold did not work at all in the humidity.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they really couldn't do much. So they actually did have to retreat in a couple of fights. But they did conquer still. Regardless.
Yeah. I mean, they made it pretty far. I mean, so Mongols had the largest empire in the history of the world. And part of that is really interesting if you look at is researching their weaponry too. And really their weaponry and their tactics, it's all conducive to fast empire building.
Yep.
So if you think back to like ancient Rome, their whole thing was that they would march about 20 miles a day and then set up camp, and they would build a palisade and other fortifications,
Right.
and they were very strong for that reason because they were organized, they were well disciplined, they were secure. But they were efficient in how they moved too. Like that's still pretty good for an army to move 20 miles a day, march 20 miles a day. Of course, this is long before the Mongols, but the Mongols were able to cover up to 100 miles a day, which is you think about going 20 miles a day is pretty good. 100 miles a day is way more than that. So it's almost like they were the ancient version of the Blitzkrieg, where they would just show up with tens or hundreds of thousands, however many there were, and out of nowhere sometimes with very little warning. And part of that too was rather than bring big siege weapons with them, they would bring siege engineers with them, like siege building experts, and build them with whatever they had around.
Yes, they'd stop outside a city they planned to sack, and they would just be like, "All right, those siege engineers, go over to the forest next to it, and just chop down enough
Which
trees
is
we
brilliant.
need."
That's so brilliant. It's like if you save days or weeks on a march because you don't have to lug friggin' trebuchets packed up. Think how if it takes that long, you could probably build a lot of that if you have enough people who are skilled in that way. Right?
Absolutely. A couple other things about their movement too. I'm pretty sure each soldier had at least two other horses in addition to the one they were
I
riding
think up
already.
to 3 horses. Yeah.
So yeah, each soldier essentially had 3 horses at their disposal. So they could ride one all day, and then when that one was tired, they could just get on the next one, keep riding while the one's rest. But another thing too is how they traveled. They didn't travel in the typical sense of a straight line with supply lines going back and forth, which is what you would usually think for like
Right.
Roman soldiers back in their days as well. The Mongols traveled in more of a horizontal line, just a giant line traveling in one direction, and that enabled them to have their horses grazing all the time and cover a more vast area of land. Because if they traveled in a straight line, they would have ran out of food for the horses. Because 3 horses for 100,000 men, you do the math. That's a lot of horses and a lot of grass.
And that's probably advantageous in different ways, but also not always. So like that sort of makes sense that not having to have supply line or consistent supply lines or much of a supply line, right? That could be a huge advantage because that supply lines can slow you down. You have to secure them. It takes resources to do all of that. But if there's not grazing land available, that could probably slow you down too. So you need to like probably not stay. I think I read that somewhere too that they couldn't stay in one place very long too. So that can work to their benefit, but also you have to keep moving because if you use up all the grazing land in an area, there are no supplies to feed the horses.
Right. But that's kind of a characteristic of Genghis Khan's plan altogether. He was never really about staying in one place and ruling. He was all about conquering. I mean, even right before he died, he planned the last conquest. He wasn't planning his last conquest. He was just planning his next conquest.
Yeah.
And he was an old man at this point, like 50s or
Yeah.
60s or even older, maybe. I'm not sure. And as soon as he went to set out for the conquest, he just died. There's a lot of accounts debating how he died. There's a lot of stories like, oh, he got poisoned, he fell from his horse, he got shot with an arrow, the enemy king cast a spell on him. So there's a lot of theories. I mean,
what do you think?
I think he was probably old, and he either caught some disease because he was old, or maybe he did fall off his horse and he just snapped his neck or something. I don't know.
Or ancient aliens.
But he's such a good rider, I would assume. I don't know if that would. I don't know though. It's hard to say. Maybe it was an inside job. I don't know.
I like how you're going with light cav and crossbows, a classic Mongol combination.
Oh yeah. I'm channeling my inner Genghis.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. Did you look up if the Mangadai is a historically accurate unit?
I did not.
I meant to do that, but then I
knew they used cavalry archers, so I would assume. I'm sure it's.
Well, that's what's interesting. So, in Age of Empires, you get cavalry archers, but you also get these units called Mangadai, which are, I mean, essentially they're better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. and I know in terms of the Mongol army composition, that's really the bulk of it are these Mongolian archers, right?
Yes, I mean a lot of times they would just do hit and run tactics.
Yeah.
So they would just hit the enemy, and this style of warfare was just not seen from like Europeans ever. So when they got as far as Eastern Europe and started to invade them, like at that time, Europeans had their knights, they had their armors, so the Age of Empires. And they've never seen this kind of tactic of all these crazy people on horses coming down with bows and arrows, shooting at them, then disappearing in the woods, and then coming back again. So they'd all run off in different directions, kind of panicking, and it just worked to his benefit.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's another thing I want to point out with his philosophy of war. When he would loot a city, he realized it was very disadvantageous to.
Disadvantageous.
There you go.
You have to try to say it like you're British.
Disadvantageous.
Yeah. So you
For his army to have it as a free for all, as they're sacking or attacking a camp, to just loot as you go, because if that happens, it's pretty much every man for himself. You loot, and then who knows? Maybe some of the enemy soldiers are getting together and they find you, and then you're dead.
Right.
So he instituted a system where they wouldn't loot till everything was done, and then once everything was looted, all the soldiers that looted everything would bring it to him into a big pile, and then he would disperse it as needed.
Really?
This was very good because he set up a system for a widowed soldier system. And essentially, if a soldier died, it would guarantee that that widow and kids they have will be provided with supplies.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So in addition to just preserving his own people, that encouraged a lot of these soldiers to not hold back, because they could fight knowing even if they fell, they'd have somebody to take care of their families. So a lot of these people wouldn't hold back when they ride into battle. So that's why a lot of them are fearless and vicious sometimes. Most of the time.
That's useful, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting that he thought to incentivize that type of motivation, essentially, right?
Right.
So
it's very interesting.
We're going in as Mongols here.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm attacking with
I didn't see you.
My light cap on the right. I probably should have attacked earlier. Oh wait, that's why I didn't. Because who am I attacking? The Burmese. Okay, there you go.
I mean, but it's a hit and a run attack.
That was my thinking. And the Burmese were they enemies of the Mongols? Maybe. I don't know if
the Burmese.
I don't know if the Mongols made it as far south as.
Interesting thing actually. I wrote a paper a couple years back about the Black Death and how it affected and influenced art. And there's a lot of theories, and it's starting to get more cemented in now that time's progressing. We're getting more resources about the past. There's a theory that the Mongols traveled down to, I think it's Burma, that area, that region, and they were just sacking some camps and whatever, and then they found this group of natives. And the natives were like, okay, here's our stuff, but don't go into those woods there. Don't do it. People will just go in there, and if they ever come back, they're horribly deformed, and they die immediately. And of course, the Mongols were like, oh, they probably got great stuff there. So they went in, and then they went to ransack it, and there was nothing really there. It was just a jungle. So this is Southeast Asia, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not in the ocean, but just on the coast there, sort of. So they would ransack that and raid it, and so the Mongols took over the Silk Road, essentially.
Wait, how did you...
I'll get to it. I'm going to connect it. Just walk with me here.
You just threw me off so hard.
So the Mongols controlled the Silk Road from China all the way through Persia, pretty much.
Right.
So they had control. They didn't really trade much, but they taxed the traders there. So they had a
Makes
lot
sense.
of influence of what was going on with the trade there. So back to Burma, when they were invading that place, they took the goods from there and traveled them onto a boat for a caravan or tradesman. And then that boat traveled up to the Black Sea. And then the Black Sea, Mongol ships there, ended up trading inland and going into Europe, and then into the Mediterranean, and then into Western Europe. And the theory is that the Mongols picked up the rodent flea that had that bacteria in its gut that led to the Black Death. So the Mongol invasion of that region ended up instituting what would be later the plague.
Who told you this?
I researched it when I was writing the paper. I was fascinated with this.
Wow.
That's
Wow,
pretty much the origin of the Black Death. They're pretty certain that's where it's from.
that's pretty wild. I would have never
No, it just doesn't
imagined
cross
that.
your mind. It's Mongol expansion that led
You
to
could
the
probably
Black
write a
Death in
pretty
Europe.
cool fable about that.
I'm sure there are.
If I
Like,
were smart enough, I
I'm
might.
sure there's some fables that are lost in times that people or individuals wrote over the century,
Yeah.
which is a shame we'll never get to see it. But
Yeah. Well, they may come up with an app for that eventually. You never know.
Mongol me now.
It's coming. So yeah, I mean, I think Age of Empires does a pretty good job in some senses of trying to represent different cultures as much as you can in a game like this. Again, it's more just for fun, but I think some of these bonuses too are kind of they do kind of represent a lot of what we've been talking about. So, I mean, just look at some of these stats. They're listed as a cavalry archer
That's pretty
civilization, so
accurate.
they got that right. Their cavalry archers fire 20% faster, which is huge. That's a huge bonus, especially the more of them you have,
Right.
because that adds up to so many more shots.
Because they don't fire very quickly on their own as a base unit, but with
Yeah.
that upgrade or that
Yeah.
benefit,
That's pretty cool. And then you get extra hit points for light cavalry and hussar.
that's big.
Yeah, 30%.
That
hit
turns the
points is a lot.
hussar into a pretty formidable unit in larger masses.
Yeah, and I mean that's great, especially since they're a food only unit.
Right.
They cost no gold. The Mangadai, the cavalry archer again. Where is that here? Yeah, it's listed with an attack bonus versus siege, which is pretty baller for an archer unit to have an attack bonus versus siege. Most archers do nothing to siege, so they're interesting in that way, I think. And then you see these other bonuses: nomads, their destroyed houses don't lose population.
That's good.
Again, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They're on the run. And I thought this was interesting, like we talked about with siege, the drill upgrade. Siege workshop units move 50% faster,
Funny.
which is doing the job of what I was saying about how
Right.
they build siege once they get somewhere.
After I did my research and I'm reading this now, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah.
funny? So I think the people who made this game, they were certainly not just familiar with them, but they did their homework. I think in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people do argue, and I'll argue that AoE 2 is probably the best made one out of the 3 released.
Oh, that's not an argument. If this makes it to YouTube, because we actually remembered to hit the record button, yeah, I will. No, I won't argue because it's a ridiculous argument. What argument is there that there's a better Age of Empires game than AoE 3 until AoE 4?
I hope so.
Please. Which we haven't
Build extra cyborgs.
we haven't heard much about that game yet. If you're watching this video in the future and you're like, "What do you mean you haven't played AoE 4 yet?" It's because it hasn't been invented yet. All right, calm down. We'll get it as soon. Trust me, we'll get it as soon as it comes out. But not a moment before, unfortunately. So, my strike force here is made up actually of a pretty classic Mongolian army. I should have more cavalry archers, and they get the basic cavalry archer too, but I should have more of those. And the rest of their units were pretty much, I think I read they were lancers, so they would have been dudes on horses with just whatever scimitars and pikes and that sort of thing.
Very oftentimes they wouldn't have many numbers either. I mean, I think his largest army was 130,000, which is an insane amount of people. However,
Yeah.
a lot of times riding into battles, they were severely outnumbered. But they had such a terror factor going for them. They would send a lot of psychological warfare before battles. They would do hit and run attacks. They would sort of send propaganda into the lower class and the peasants that the Mongols are coming and they're going to liberate you from the oppressive aristocracy. So they would get the lower. Seriously, so they would get the lower classes to start
awesome.
oh, maybe we should do
So
something.
they were just
here.
husling.
They really were.
They were just making
Genghis
moves.
Khan was making moves.
Yeah, I think as well. Spoiler for anybody who isn't caught up on Game of Thrones yet, but if you haven't caught up, I mean, get with it.
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's 2018.
If you're watching an Age of Empires history cast on YouTube, you should be caught up with Game of Thrones. That's on you. Okay. But in the previous season, most recent season, when they had the Dothraki ride in, and it was just the whole vibe was just the look on the soldiers' faces were just like, we're so dead, we're so about to die. And then
Yeah.
and they said when the producers, when they were doing that whole sequence, that battle, they tried to do a cross between what they imagine Mongolian warfare would be like and American Native Americans on horseback. So that's why they were doing crazy stuff, just like jumping up on top of their horses and shooting arrows. Because the producer said, let's just make them do the craziest things possible, humanly possible. Because that's what it would have been like. You would have been lined up with your pikes and been like, all right, we'll hold the line. And then all of a sudden a dragon flies down. No. All of a sudden, you know what I mean though.
Absolutely.
They start jumping up on horses, and then there's like
I-
that one guy who just jumps over the line and hacks like 5 of them to death and dies. But
That's
then,
gonna.
guess what? There's 10,000.
That's
more.
gonna get them shaken.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like, oh, we finally stabbed one of them to death. They killed like 5 of us.
I saw a thing while I was researching too that a lot of times when they would ride into battle on their horses, they would tie a stick to the back of their horse's tail, and what that did was kick up the dirt behind their horses. So as they rode from the distance towards the enemy would see just a horde of horses with a giant dust cloud behind them, thinking, "Oh man, there's a lot more behind them too. This is a huge army."
Yeah.
And then they'd ride in, and they terrified, and a lot of times they would break and run, and that just helped the Mongols a lot.
Was this a Mongol thing too? Because I remember watching something on History Channel years ago about how I think it was the Mongols, but it might have been somebody else, like the Huns or something. I don't know. Or I think it was like an Eastern Asian civilization though, but it was about how they had these long like cloth banners on the back of their horses, and they would wave vertically, and when you were, oh, we got a resignation here.
Oh boy.
Oh, they're fighting against each other. So newsflash: don't fight against each other when the Mongols are coming.
No.
Oh, we got
that's
two
foolish.
quick resignations.
Oh wow. Okay.
Well, the horde is coming for all of them. So. But anyway, so this cloth fabric would flap in the breeze, and the thinking was that you could shoot, if you shot an arrow at it, it would knock the arrow out of the way. And they tested it, and it turned out that yeah, you can be aiming right at the dude or right at the horse, and if it's waving hard enough, like you hit a certain speed, it shakes the arrow and it loses all its power.
That's very interesting because I also saw that once they started to
Oh, my horde is moving.
get the silk trade
no surrender
domination going, and they were overseeing a lot of it.
Yeah.
They had access to a lot of luxuries, resources that they'd never seen before, like metal, silk, gold, silver, pillows, blankets. They didn't have that.
Yeah.
So there was a time where they would wear silk under their armor, and what the silk did was when they were riding into battle and they got shot with an arrow, they would later take off the armor, and the arrow would be easier to take out with the silk because they could twist it out and it would turn to the silk. The silk would absorb a lot of the shock, surprisingly. So it was an additional layer of defense. I mean, it's not a lot, it's silk, but still, it made a big difference.
I would take it over nothing, that's for sure.
Right, in 1206, yeah. Take anything I can get.
Oh, this was so bad, this attack that I did. Because I didn't have enough manga die. Yeah, I went in with way too few manga die. I don't think this castle went up. Yeah.
That's good.
I didn't get this castle up.
Oh, that's your castle. Never mind. That's not good.
No, this is terrible. But then, friggin' light blue.
Oh, see,
came.
they're getting smart.
Yeah, everybody's fighting. Oh, I did get up the castle. I didn't think I got the castle.
Mongol forward castle.
Yeah, there's nothing like that Mongolian forward castle, right? Yeah, ideally what you... I mean, I think... Oh, I got him to resign.
Nice.
I think what this... It's funny how some techniques, like battle strategies, translate really well to this game from like how the actual civilization might have battled. And again, I like how some of the texts are kind of representative of those techniques, but you gotta go with the forward castle.
Absolutely.
That was a weirdly placed forward castle.
Very
too.
weird. But it worked.
I don't know why I put it there.
I mean, it kind of went up after they resigned pretty
The horde
much.
prevails. So I think you're moving in on the left here. With
I'm
your
getting ready, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a nice little army.
I like your army comp. I don't know about these arbs, but
Yeah, they were more of a defensive thing at the beginning, and then I kind of just stuck with it. I committed to the
that
arm.
makes sense. You
They're
would have
not
been
bad
better.
though. They have good arm
You would have been
sets.
better off putting all of that into more manga die though.
Yeah. But here we are.
I mean, Arbs are. I don't know how Mongol Arbs are.
Arbs be Arbs. No, all their archers are very
It sounds
good.
like somebody who eats at Arby's way too much. What they say, Arbs be Arbs.
Plugging Arby's.
I guess they have pretty good arbalists.
No,
yeah.
they do have good arbalists. They're an archer civ.
Yeah, they got upgrades, and then they probably have most of the tech upgrades for. Oh, they don't have ring archer.
Oh, that's
armor.
surprising. Or that.
Or plate barding armor. That's annoying.
But they do have the plus 20 HP. Or 20%.
Yeah, that's pretty
HP.
sweet. Well, that's what's funny is some of the techs that you don't get when you first see it in Civ. You're like, what? They don't get this tech, and then you realize, oh yeah, because they get way more whatever.
Yeah. Here I go attacking.
Here comes
the horde.
the Tommy horde, Tommy Khan.
The golden horde.
Yeah, that's what you are. Yeah. Yeah, so the Mongol Empire, it really does have such a weird legacy too, because like we said, it was an empire that conquered so much so quickly. It's not even that it was the biggest empire ever. I think so much is that it did what it did so quickly.
Absolutely. Genghis Khan started as a small child in a small tribe, and he ended up ruling at the age of 45 over a territory of 1 million people.
1 million people.
1 million people.
That's it?
That's a lot of people then, at the time. There's not that many people back then in the world, Joe.
No, he ruled more than that.
At the time. That wasn't the height.
Oh.
This was 1206.
Oh.
This was when he became Genghis Khan. This
Oh.
wasn't when he was finished.
Oh.
This is when he's just kicking
Oh,
off. He's
you didn't
already
say
1
that.
million deep.
Oh, you didn't say that. I didn't know we were going millions deep.
At this point, in 1206, he ruled over the Gobi Desert from the south, the Arctic tundra to the north, the Manchurian forests in the east, and the Altai Mountains to the west. And that was just the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, he ruled over a lot. And then, like I said earlier, his whole life was just about conquest. He didn't know what to do. I mean, he enjoyed temporary peace with his family briefly, but then he'd get that bug going again, and he'd just want to go out conquering.
Fair enough.
But he instituted a lot of societal changes.
I didn't know that he had so many policies, like, because a lot of his policies that you're mentioning, they sound pretty brilliant.
They're not bad. I mean, he didn't
family
do everything great,
insurance
but like
and all
a
that.
lot of his things, he was pretty smart. Here's
Well, I
a
mean,
few
he
more.
massacred entire
Yeah,
civilization.
first thing I got listed: abolished inherited aristocratic titles. So he destroyed the whole hereditary inherit system. He criminalized the abduction and enslavement of any Mongol. He forbade the selling and kidnapping of women, which is what happened to his mother. And he made livestock theft punishable by death, which makes sense because livestock was a way of life then.
Yeah,
It's
that's
kind of
more.
your living.
It's more than if I stole your PlayStation, whatever. What are they up to for?
25.
God, I should know that. Yeah.
So he also adopted a writing system for them. He conducted a census, and he provided a freedom for of religion. So he had like Muslim underlings,
Huh,
Buddhists.
didn't know that.
He ruled over everybody. He's like, well, the thing was they were shamanistic, the Mongols. So they believed in the spirits of their land, and they're like hunting gods and whatever. And they realized like, well, geography is not like this everywhere else, so I don't really expect other people to follow this. So like, follow your religion. That's not a big deal. Just swear allegiance to the Great Khan.
Fair enough.
Yeah. He's pretty nuts, man. It's
Yeah.
fascinating to learn about, though. I do implore you to research it a little bit more if you don't know.
So
much
did
about him.
he drink tea with Marco Polo?
No, that's Kublai Khan.
Really?
Yeah.
See, this is
He
why
went to his court.
this is why I bring you in, Mr. History Buff.
I don't know much more than that, but
I'm just a lowly professor type. You're the genius here.
I think it's Kublai. Kublai was his grandson.
I thought it was
One of
Kupla.
many. What?
Well, he must have had 16 million grandsons.
Yeah. He had 3 sons that he had.
Didn't he name the third one Khan though? It wasn't the first son, was it?
It was the third one, because the first 2 were
Were
kind of
jerks?
fighting. Yeah, they were jerk offs, and they were fighting each other over it. And like he called what's the name of the council? They called it the Calatree or something. Did you see that in your research? The
That-
Calatree. I'm mispronouncing it, but it's a gathering of a small group of trusted advisors or family in his like little sphere. So he called it together to figure out. Well, I'm getting old. and like I have this whole empire here, and like what am I gonna do to ensure that what I did to do all this like stays how it is and keeps going? So he had to decide who to name the next Khan, and he brought everybody together. He brought his 3 sons together. The first 2 were older and pretty dead set on becoming the next Khan. And the third, it's actually legend says that he came in late and a little inebriated to the meeting, and he sat down. So he was much more like relaxed, laid back compared to the other 2. Um, so the other 2 started arguing after the first one was asked by Genghis Khan to plead his case. And by asking him first to begin with, it was kind of recognizing, all right, he's the elder son, probably going to give it to him. So the other one, the second son, interrupted him right when he started, pretty much, and they started to go back and forth until they started a fist fight. And Genghis Khan broke it up. He was like, guys, what the hell? Like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is not how this should happen. And he was like getting really upset and like, sad about it. He was like, this is gonna be my legacy. Like, you guys need to stop fucking around. And then it ended up being decided that neither of them should be Great Khan. And he ended up naming the third son Great Khan and giving the other 2, because he split the empire up for each one. He gave a section. He gave like the west to one side and the east to the other side, and like the farthest ends. And he gave control in the center to the third son and named him the Great Khan.
And the other 2 sons were just chill with that?
Well, they were like a little upset. Like, what are you gonna do? He's Genghis Khan.
You're gonna not go in against Persian war elephants with just archers. That's what you're gonna do. And like that. Yeah, they really got me here. I was not expecting so many scorpions and elephants.
Persians, man.
Yeah. That'll get you. But I see you're going in here against the
I ate yellow.
Berbers.
Yellow's done. I forgot.
Yeah, but now you're hitting the Berber. See, this is a good position that you're attacking because you're getting them in these choke points.
I got the forward castle on the hill. I got the arbalest.
But see how they're trapped here? They can only hit so much. They can't surround you. So your Mangudai are just slaying them.
Yep.
And now you got the forward castle. That's a smooth move, dude.
I had a good game this round.
You need to be pumping out more Mangudai, though.
Yeah.
Sure. You need more Mangudai here. You only have... How many do you have? Let me switch to your view. Oops, that's me getting slaughtered.
I think I was checking you out. When,
yeah, you need more Mangudai. You need like twice as many.
You know why? Because I had all the arbalest.
I mean, it's fine because you have plenty of light cav, but...
I had all the arbalest shooting arrows, so I just didn't think it was necessary.
Well, they're all dead.
Yeah, I mean, it works regardless.
So. Oh, wait, no, they're not. They're all...
No, they're right there, yeah.
Oh, I didn't notice them.
I thought you meant green was all dead.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. I was like, he's not going to be able to hold against this with, like, 10 Mangudai.
Oh, why do you think that castle's shooting, like, 100 arrows?
There's arrows everywhere, dude. I can't tell who's shooting arrows.
That's Mongols, baby.
I thought your castle was just falling them down.
It's a Mongol bonus.
It's a Mongol bonus? Knock them down?
Knocking them down.
So I sort of held this here, but... Yeah, it's killing ground. Not how the Mongols would have done it.
No.
They would have surrounded you, and then... Because they were all into, like, fake retreats and stuff, too. They did that a lot against the Hungarians. They would do, like, these fake retreats, and then kind of surround you all of a sudden, and then you were dead.
Pretty much.
It was over.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, their tactics were pretty much unheard of at the time. Nobody's ever seen them like this before, where they would just come in, hit them hard.
That's what you're doing here.
And then they leave. Yeah, exactly what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. You stick with what works.
Yeah, it's rough.
They didn't stand a chance. Who is this? The Burmese?
The Berbers, I think.
Berbers?
Yeah, Berbers. I think we tried to pick civs too that were like people who would have fought actual Mongols.
Yeah.
Byzantines, maybe. Yeah, they were around.
Yeah, I don't know
Persians,
if they got
that's
that far. If anything, they definitely traded with them indirectly.
Persians are lots of people, I guess.
Persians.
Malians, I don't think.
Persians.
I think they made it to Malia.
Persian cuisine has rice in it because of the Mongols.
What does that mean?
Mongol trade from the Silk Road brought rice down to them. Yes.
I did not know that.
And that's why it's a staple in their cuisine today.
You're killing it with these light cav.
Yeah. It's the Mongols, man. The Hussars.
Yeah, attacking
I'm telling you, got the plus
Mongol
20%.
Hussars with...
It's not plus 20 HP. It's
attacking
plus 20%.
Mongol Hussars with Castle Age Spearmen is not going to cut it.
No. I like the effort, but
like what are at this point post probably light cav. Yeah, it's not going to do the trick. Not going to do the trick at all.
I had a good game here.
So the Mongols also used composite bows, Did you read anything about their bows?
No, but I did see, or as I mentioned earlier, with the climate down south, how their bows just weren't equipped for it. I mean, they were great for snap.
Yeah.
The snap was great in the heat and the cold of the steppe,
Hmm.
but when you get to more humid regions, where it's much drier in the north, more humid in like India, that's
Right.
why they never really could conquer India, because their bows just wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't fire accurately. They'd fall apart. So that's what kind of limited to them to still being the largest empire ever.
Yeah.
So
Because they used recurve bows, which is actually the type of bow that I have. It's a really sick bow.
tell me more.
I'm
That's
just
it.
saying. I'm really into archery. It's in the it's over there.
It's in the office.
It is over there, but yeah, recurve bows are really cool. They're really fun. I would recommend anybody responsible enough
Any
to have
Mongol
one.
aspirer.
Well, I was just gonna say person who likes bows, but I like how you're picking off the vills of this dead guy.
Yeah, man. You can't let anyone
I'm trying to
survive.
fight the
That's
Persians
the Mongol
over
way.
here.
They don't want to join me, so I have to kill them all.
This is true. There was one empire that God, I don't know how to pronounce it either. Started with a K. The empire.
Was it out west?
No, it was in like Persia.
So out west?
It was in like what?
Like
Oh,
west
to
of
them, I guess. Yeah.
No, not to us.
Well, it's all about
It's
from
all
my
west,
perspective. You jerk. Um, the Quasi Empire, something like that, and I think that their dude specifically. I remember reading this years ago that the emperor or whatever of that empire killed the
merchant?
emissary.
Yeah, because he made a truce with him. The Sultan was like hesitant, but he's like, okay. And then they sent the a few tradesmen and merchants, and like the first merchant that entered, one of the guys was like, "Fuck you," and just killed him and took all his stuff, and he didn't realize what he did. And then like Genghis Khan found out, he was like, "What the fuck, man?" So he sent an envoy to the Sultan. He's like, "What the hell, man? Like, can you punish the guy that did this?" And then the guy ended up killing some of the envoys, and then like horribly like dismembering some of the other ones, and then sending them back. So like while they were like mutilated, some like an eye or something, Genghis was like, "What the fuck?" That infuriated him and just brought on the wrath of the Khan.
Because I think that was one of the kingdoms or empires that he completely annihilated. Like the reason why nobody knows about this empire is because he ordered the entire thing to be grounded to dust.
He leveled it.
No survivors.
Remember what I said about him not letting anybody live that didn't want to join him?
Yeah.
Well, they already decided they weren't going to join him, man.
Well, not like 99.999% of the people in their empire, unfortunately.
Yes, he just figured, like, well, I can't trust Sultan, so I'm just going to kill
Can't
them
trust
all.
his people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should mention that too. Like, he wasn't vicious.
No, he wasn't like the highest morality god.
Oh, I mean,
but I mean, he had some great ideas and he had some great pitfalls.
Well, this is so much of history though, where you can't. There's so few people in history that you can look at from today's standards and say, oh, this was not an utterly evil person. Like, pretty much everybody is awesome, right?
Absolutely, everybody's got some skeletons in the closet.
I mean, he had mad skeletons. They weren't in no closets.
Oh, I forgot this thing. He had millions, like just blood on his hands.
Oh, people that he killed.
All the reforms that he introduced from when he was a kid, because he wanted to change the world from the horrible thing he witnessed when he was a kid, which was just death and fighting, constant warfare. He wanted to make a difference, change the world. But did he? How many millions of people died just to kind of get where he wanted to get? And did that even accomplish anything? I don't know.
I mean,
it led into a great dynasty where, like, I think
it did change history for sure.
His last direct descendant, which was still in power in a country, was ousted in like 1920 during like a Soviet usurp, and like
really?
it was one of the stand countries, and that whole Soviet. We'll do that in another episode, but.
Oh yeah, the Soviets versus the Mongols. I can't wait for that one.
So
for that Age of Empires episode.
Maybe there'll be Age of Empires 4. I don't know.
It might be. Fair enough.
Yeah, so the last one of his descendants was ousted in 1920. And
wow,
he
really?
came about like a little bit before
That's
1200.
crazy.
That's a long span, man. How many
Yeah.
years is that? 12, 13, 14, 15,
It's
16,
enough years.
17. That's like 700 years?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, so certainly there's a lasting legacy. I think that's fair to say, for better and worse, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's typically how it goes. Up, and
And
we
there's
have
our last resignation.
the resignation, and that is it. The Mongols conquer the world. You know, I realize in retrospect we should have had each other turn on each other to be the ultimate con.
We should
We
have.
should have. Yeah, we should have.
That
Well,
would
we
have
can
been
do that for
great.
part two.
That's right.
We'll do that for next time. Um, yeah. Well, we did it. We
Yeah.
the Mongols conquered the world. I mean, again, this isn't a serious game. This one, at least, we were just trying to get through it.
Yeah, and just wanted to
Yeah.
research and talk about and share our history and our knowledge about the Mongols.
We will
It's
have
fascinating.
we will have some some further games coming up. We have a very special holiday game coming up.
We do. That's in the
where
works.
we will battle each other. Don't you worry. We battle hard. One of us fails very badly. So you'll have to watch next week, I guess, for
To
that.
see a little
We'll
cliffhanger.
do that as our end of year holiday episode, maybe. Can I exit game here to look at stats?
Yeah, go to achievements.
There's no achievements.
Oh,
Well, let's see what happens.
all right.
Well, if we leave, it's been nice.
Yes. Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
It's been very nice.
And,
I hope you learned something new.
yeah,
I hope
if-
you took something away from
Please
this.
comment on everything we got totally wrong or
Yeah,
somewhat
please,
wrong, or a little
correct
bit wrong.
us if we're wrong, or
And,
if you have something to add, please.
Yeah,
add.
let us know what other battles and topics you'd like us to do and talk about, because
Yeah,
we,
this is going to be kind of the theme of this series. We're just going to research,
Yeah,
share
we're
what
nerds.
we've learned about it, and
Yeah. yeah.
hope you enjoyed as much as we did.
All right. Oh, look at that.
Oh, look at that.
achievements.
All right.
All right, so we're back.
All right.
You actually, you killed it.
I did have.
I had more kills, but I had way more deaths. Oh, the
I had a good
deaths.
ratio. So the Arbalests, man,
Yeah, they'll do it.
you're ripping on them, but they
Yeah.
did something for me.
Oh,
Pretty good economy though.
you had better. not my best game. I'm not proud of it, but
It's all right though.
That's
You
fine.
mongled.
all right. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Like, share, and subscribe.